I'm Scott Allen Miller, and this is my everyday life living in Leon, Nicaragua. Today I decided to do the video in a little bit different location and see if you guys can figure out where I am. It's not really a challenge, it's just a little bit different. I never record back here, and you can see a whole lot of laundry lines, and we're way out, and so you get a lot of the Constantine wire up there. This is kind of a remote part of the house, and you might hear a bit of an echo. Anyway, today I'm kind of doing a little bit different video because it's a Sunday. It's been kind of a drizzly day. We've been overcast all day. I haven't had a lot of free time, and I've been working all day, so we're going to be talking about a couple little topics off of the channel today. So it's kind of a relaxed one, a little bit shorter one for a Sunday, but I'll be going over that and join all of you right after the bomb. I'm kind of standing in a jungle as I'm talking here. I'm going to spin this around. So first of all, this is our water tower, just in case anybody wants to see it. This is the jungle I'm right up against. Like, we never show this part of the house because it's really far away, and there is this echo. I'm going to put the camera over here, and we have this like really cool like window that I forget is there, and it's actually kind of interesting. So, and my Boston Terrier just arrived. He found out we were in the back and wanted to come explore. The dogs love it when I do videos back here because they get to go someplace different, and I'm here with them, so they think that that's a lot of fun. So even though they come out here from time to time on their own, when I'm out here, it's like a big deal for them. Anyway, so today I was asked the question on the show that why don't we use screens here in Nicaragua? We talk about this a bit, that we don't have screens on the houses in many cases. Let's just be clear right from the beginning, some people do have screens. They're not unheard of. And I do have a couple rooms where screens do exist. Specifically, now I have to stop and think about it. I don't know. I do know we have a room or two with screens. I'm just not sure which ones they are. I think my office had one, but we ended up putting plastic over that because we don't want anything moving through there, including air. So we do have them, but it's not things that we use, right? But they do exist. You can go to the store, you can buy them. Occasionally you'll find people who do have them, but by and large, they're not something that we use. And so the question is, why? Why don't we use them? Other than, obviously, they cost some money, and if you don't want to spend the money, well, you don't need to. Okay, but, and the person asked, is it because we just don't have insects here? Is it because people are used to the insects, they don't care? And honestly, I think it's a combination of a lot of things. One is that they do cost money, and they're very easy to damage. And if you spend a lot of time with Nicaraguans, you'll find that they do have a tendency to damage things quite often. It is a cultural thing, or some just situation with all the cats and stuff. I don't know, but things like that I would expect to get damaged a lot more often than in the US. But importantly, traditional windows here are not built around screens, and so the design of windows does not accommodate them very easily. So in many cases, putting them in would actually be very costly because you'd have to replace the entire window mechanism. I don't think that the windows have the same standard sizes in the way that American windows do. I think there's a lot of like practical reasons why most homes don't really accommodate them, but of course you could adjust for that. But in most cases, it's a bit of an undertaking, and there are a lot of course, cultural differences between North America and Latin America that account for some amount of reasons that things are different, but also there's a lot of practicality differences as well. We just have different weather to deal with, different things that are major factors. And of course, as I'm saying this, there's a couple insects buzzing around my head, but you saw where I am, right? I've got a lot of kind of wild plants. This is a papaya tree coming up over top of me right here. So it's certainly, whether for historical reasons or monetary reasons or whatever, a bit more difficult to put screens into houses here. In the US, you'd be like, they just all come with screens, and a standard screen fits in nearly every window, and you just pop it in. Like, it's so easy. Here, it wouldn't be the case. You'd have to replace a bunch of things, or things wouldn't work properly, and you'd have to readjust a lot of the mechanisms and probably put in much more expensive windows. The windows that we typically use here are much cheaper than we use in North America because they use slatted windows. Now, part of that goes towards screens are more useful in places with air conditioning, with central air and so forth, simply because of the types of windows that they use. So there's a layer after layer of practicality. But again, some people do it here, and it definitely can be done if it's a priority for you. So I think that's one factor. A second factor is simply cost. Screens are an additional cost that you can live without, and many Nicaraguans are not looking at ways to spend extra money, and so if that's something that they can just get used to not having, certainly that is an option. They also block some amount of airflow. Not a lot, that's the beauty of screens, they let a lot of air through, but they do block some, and of course it's very warm here, so the more airflow you can get, the better. Although I don't see a lot of that becoming a big deal, but it probably is a factor. But far more importantly is we don't actually have that many insects. And most importantly, we don't have that many insects that we care about coming through the windows. So I notice in my own house, which is wide open, right? We have no screens. The entire majority of the house, the main portion of the house, which is the majority of the house, is completely open at all times. So insects can just come and go, and big ones, right? Tarantulas could just come in, cats can just come in, right? So if a cat, and we have neighborhood cats, they just come in and eat food. Like if we leave something on the counter in the kitchen, the cats are going to come into from the neighborhood and eat it, which is fine. That's what we would prefer to do rather than throwing out that food. So perfect. But because of that, any insect that's outside can come in quite easily. We do find that because of that, we get a ton of moths. Because we have lights on at night, they come in, and then during the day, they often sleep on the walls. We have a few things like that, but not things that are scary or dangerous. And like I said, we do get some spiders. We do get tarantulas wandering around the house, but they're not really that bad. I know some of you are freaking out right now, but we don't get them through the windows. We get them through the doors. They just walk in the doors because we leave the door open so much of the time, including at night. If you come to my house, even in the dark, tarantulas can just walk in, but the nice thing is I can just, kind of chase them out and they'll leave that way as well. It's not a big deal. Tarantulas aren't really scary. Scorpions would be scary, and we do have scorpions here in Nicaragua. Thank goodness we have never had one in the house here, even though we're wide open. They could come in quite easily. We have not encountered one, but you could, so it's something you want to be aware of. Generally, those are dissuaded from coming into your house. They don't really want to be in your house. It's not a huge issue, but it certainly is a real thing to be concerned about. So some things that we do, like leaving the doors wide open, yeah, that might be an extreme case. We also live in the big garden, so we have a lot of space for wild things to come in. So we encourage a lot more things to come into the house, not intentionally, of course, compared to normal people. Most people have their doors open during bright parts of the day when they're busy and they're near the door, but their windows normally are open at night anyway. So I think that on one side, the number of things that would come into your house generally is much lower than you're used to in North America. I grew up in New York and I lived in Texas for a long time, and in both those places the number of flies and horse flies and mosquitoes and things like that that would come into the house if you had your windows open was huge. It was a major concern. If we left our doors open for a second, they would just swarm into the house and it would be absolutely awful. And ladybugs and things that are similar to that. We had so many insects. Going outside was like, oh, you're just constantly dealing with insects. Here in Nicaragua, I have yet to live anywhere that had any significant number of insects. Nothing that came close to what we had to either living in Western New York, living in the Hudson Valley, living in Texas, living in South Carolina, all those places. Far more bugs than we experience here in Nicaragua. So I think the general lack of bugs, whether it's a natural lack of bugs like you have in Europe or a artificial lack of bugs through carefully taken care of. For example, here in our community, they come and fumigate on a regular basis, right? Both private and public fumigation helps to keep things like mosquitoes at bay. That does a lot. So I don't want to say that it's all natural that we wouldn't have mosquitoes if we didn't treat for them. We treat for them all the time. They're very acutely aware of the dangers of mosquitoes, so they go out of their way to try to make sure that there's a minimal population. That does wonders. So that may be the reason there aren't so many, but there aren't so many. Plus, we're very careful at protecting our bats and other things, so they're constantly swooping around the yard cleaning up what's left. So that makes a big difference. And we have lots of birds, right? It's not like when I lived in Texas, we have very few birds, very few bats. Here we got loads of birds, loads of bats, and they just fly around eating what insects remain. That does quite make a difference, right? People kind of downplay how important those are, but when you have a wilder environment, they actually do keep the insects population controlled. And then I have my Boston Terrier running around who keeps the cat population controlled. They don't want to come in here because he's a good hunter. He also keeps us protected from the squirrels who would invade if he wasn't here. He assures us they would invade if he wasn't here. I'll see if I can get him walking around. There he is. He's patrolling behind me. A general lack of insects is actually a factor. And then, of course, we do get used to a certain number of more insects. Walking through my house, like I said, there's moths, sometimes giant moths. I'm not kidding, this big on the walls. And yeah, I don't like those, but the little ones, I don't mind at all. And we do get used to having those and some other insects too, right? And there's always something. Living in New York, ladybugs always got in the house, right? I think we are used to a small amount more insects being in our living space, but I think we're also used to far less in the overall space, and we're used to, being in Nicaragua, that the outdoors and the indoors are a symbiotic thing. You're basically always outdoors or always indoors, depending on how you look at it, whereas in most of the United States and Canada, you have a very discrete outdoor life and indoor life, and the air doesn't really move between the two, and that keeps insects and stuff very much at bay. So you're used to lots of insects outside and zero inside. And here I think you're used to very few outside and very few inside, but they're able to move back and forth much more. So I really do think it is a combination. As this person asked, which of these factors is true? I think they're both true. And certainly for me, having lived here for a while, I definitely am used to being exposed to more insects inside the house than I would be comfortable with when I lived in the US, but also the number that are in the house are a tiny fraction of what we would have had when we were in the US. And when we were in the US and we lived in Texas, Paul, my business partner, and I used to fumigate the yard 3 times a day. 3 times a day, so that we could go outside at all. There were so many mosquitoes and flying bugs around. Here, we fumigate once every few months just to make sure that they're not becoming breeding populations and so forth. So very, very different things. And when we are here, even just before we fumigate, we really don't notice the mosquitoes being that bad. In Texas, it would be after an hour. It was already so bad that we could barely stand to be outside. We had to fumigate just before we would go out because they would come back so fast. So the difference is staggering. And I don't think that people really appreciate just how many insects North America has. The people who are from North America often don't realize, I certainly didn't realize when I lived there, that insects were so dramatically different than the rest of the world. But it is the place with all the insects. When you move to places like Europe, which I did long ago, suddenly you don't really notice it at first. You don't realize what's different. There's no insects. You don't notice any at all. I lived in Spain, Italy. I lived in the islands in the Caribbean. I lived in mainland. I lived in Central Europe. I've traveled all over Europe, and nowhere has any significant number of insects that I've ever experienced. And everywhere in the United States that I've ever been has huge numbers of insects. It's really dramatic. Now, Latin America is nothing like Europe. That's extreme with no insects. And it's nothing like North America, which is extreme with the entire world is covered in insects. It's a happy middle ground, right? But it is amazing when you leave North America that the rest of the world doesn't generally have to deal with the level of insects that North America does. That is a very pleasant surprise that most people don't think about. So I think all those things are true. I also think that the economics and the older homes lend themselves to not dealing with screens. It just doesn't make sense. If you're constructing a brand new house, you might want to put in screens, but there's also a decent chance that you would want to air condition all the time because the temperature is stable. If you're going to air condition, typically you air condition all the time. You're not going to have that cool season and that warm season the way that you do in North America. So North Americans are used to, most of them, right? Maybe not Southern Florida, maybe not San Antonio, not San Diego, but most of North Americans experience a time of the year where they want to air condition and a time of the year when they can cool by natural air, and often a time of the year that they need to heat, right? It's a completely different thing. But here in Nicaragua, you never want to heat your home. And if you are going to go to air conditioning, if it's unlikely that you're only going to want to do that on hot days, and it's unlikely you're only going to want to do it during the hotter parts of the day. You may want to, but it's not really practical, right? Keeping your house wide open so you have fresh air during the morning is difficult to then go to air conditioning in the afternoon if you're then going to sleep in the house, right? So if you're moving rooms, you may air condition at different times, but if you're building a house that would be practical for screens, you are probably building a house that is well sealed and has really good windows and has really good efficient air conditioning, and you probably want to air condition basically every day. Well, if you want to do that, you're often going to just air condition all day long, because at night you want to sleep in the air conditioning, during the day you want to work in the air conditioning, and either you're just going to shut the whole house off and not be there, or you're going to be there and you want to keep it cool, because when it's daytime is when it's warm and you really need the air conditioning, and at night most people want to sleep with the air conditioning. And so there's just a certain practicality to living in the tropics. And if you're going to go to air conditioning, which certainly a lot of people will, especially here in like Leon or Chinandega, the super hot cities, then chances are you're never going to go to the screen. So why pay to put them in and have that block your view when you can have those bright, beautiful windows, have no screens at all, and just never open the windows? That's the actual reality, I think, of most situations where you would go to screens. So that's a long explanation, but I think that screens just end up not being a sensible part of the ecosystem in most cases here. Certainly going to be exceptions, and if it's something you want, absolutely you can do it. Won't be a big expense. It's just you'll be a little bit different, and most people will not be used to it. The other thing I wanted to point out today, I was having a bathroom thought today that so often we are bombarded with people telling us that we should not be doom scrolling when we're in the bathroom. This is the bane of modern society, is going onto Instagram or TikTok and watching these stupid videos while you're in the bathroom. I want to point something out. This is not deteriorating your brain. In the old days, in the bathroom, you used to read Reader's Digest or worse, a shampoo bottle. I want you to think about how stupid that content is. It is completely banal. It is either just a pointless and repetitive list of chemicals that you've read 1,000 times and you have nothing else to read, or you're reading some little short thing that is basically a printed version of a TikTok video. It's not as interesting or engaging. It's also not as educational. It's not up to date. It's just whatever old newspaper or magazine article was left on the back of the toilet. If you're young, you're probably like, what now? But if you're of any age whatsoever before you had phones in the bathroom, everyone kept magazines in their bathrooms or Reader's Digest, like little tiny articles in small books that would sit on the back of toilets or right by toilets. And trust me, the concept is gross, yes. And they would sit there forever. And when you visit someone's house, you would go use the bathroom and there would be magazines to keep you busy while you're in the bathroom. This was a really weird part of North American culture growing up, but standard, and we never thought anything of it. Because if you didn't have those things, you were bored out of your mind. I remember going to my grandparents' house. That's where I would read Popular Mechanics and Popular Science. They kept the bathroom always stocked with educational magazines. And those are not bad resources to have in a bathroom. But when I go on Reels or on TikTok, I'm often getting Popular Mechanics, right, when I'm in the bathroom. So I'm getting up-to-date articles from the same source that I got magazine articles that were years out of date back when I was a child. Honestly, you shouldn't be in the bathroom that long. If you're in the bathroom long enough that your reading material matters, probably need to think about getting some exercise and fiber, and your reading material in the bathroom is not the actual problem going on. But for the rest of us, if you can find anything that keeps you from reading the back of a shampoo bottle while you're in the bathroom, you're probably way ahead of the game. Humans were not really designed to be super educated while using the bathroom. Of course, you can choose to do some really useful things. I highly recommend Duolingo. Get one of your lessons done while in the bathroom. That's a great use of your time, absolutely. But you shouldn't feel shame if you decide to go on Instagram and just scroll through Reels for a little bit. I see fun at some of my funniest stuff while I'm in the bathroom, and there's no reason not to do that. You need a way to pass the time, and you need to be entertained for a very small block of time, hopefully a small block of time. And so having tiny bits of entertainment, and those algorithms are designed, yes, to keep you entertained, hopefully not to keep you stuck in the bathroom. So as long as you treat it as just a way to keep the bathroom time entertaining for you, there is no harm whatsoever in taking those few minutes of pleasure to watch something silly or to post memes or send them off to your friends and get little clips of news. Now, of course, which videos you're watching, of course, it's good if you watch educational ones. It's good if you watch real news ones. It's good if you watch funny ones, get good jokes, comedy routines, memes, whatever. Just make sure you're getting healthy stuff that you're reading. But beyond that, yeah, all that doom scrolling for those few moments. Now, when you're going to bed and you're stopping yourself from getting to sleep because you feel like scrolling through that, that's something you may want to adjust in your life. But when you're in the bathroom, you're taking those few minutes to enjoy that, don't feel bad about it. That's just a weird cultural thing that they're trying to make you feel bad about. Thanks for joining me. Like and subscribe. If you'd like to help support the channel, you can buy me a coffee at buymeacoffee.com/ScottAlanMiller. And you can also watch my videos while in the bathroom. I do have some shorts, but my regular videos are long. You can pause them and save them for the next time you're in the bathroom to continue. That is a great way to pass the time and get something educational and uplifting while you're in the bathroom, if that's what you're looking for. And of course, by watching another video, you can support the channel. By hitting like, you can support the channel. You can send this to a friend or family member to get them hooked on the show. That helps as well. But anything you do, it all helps. I appreciate it very much. And you can join the channel with the join button down below. We have a lot of information in the comments. And of course, leave a comment yourself down below. Ask questions, probably not about bathrooms or screens. We're going to cover those enough whether you ask or not. And I will see all of you tomorrow.